we have the privilege of hosting Katja Iversen. She's the CEO of the Museum for the UN, and also Kumi Naidoo, Payne Distinguished Lecturer at Stanford University, but he's also been the former Secretary General of Amnesty International and the first person from the Global South to lead Greenpeace International. And these two visionary leaders will share their insights on how to harness popular culture for positive action. And they will lay out a roadmap for leveraging influential power of popular culture to foster positive change and for the sustainable development in our increasingly polarized world. So please welcome to the stage our panelists.
Thank you. Thank you.
Good morning, good morning. Thank you very much. Thank you. So it is an honor to be here and to kick us off on this beautiful day. My name is Katja Iversen and I'm the CEO of UN Live, as Susanna said. We are an agile cousin to the United Nations, working with popular culture, music, film, gaming, sports, food, fashion, because we know that that is what influences the many people, opinions, behavior, norms. And if we want to see a sustainable world, we can't just move the few a little or a lot, but we've got to move the many. So that's what we do. We work to create that feeling of a global we, of belonging and of caring, of empathy. In a world that's becoming more and more polarized, we need that more than ever. And it is amazing what popular culture can do in that regard, and not least gaming. And it has just been wonderful to be here to kind of listen and learn and be inspired. With me, I have Kumi Naidoo, who is a troublemaker. Of the best kind, you know, as a human rights activist, a climate justice activist, and a change maker. And we will have a fire chat, which is very, appropriate in the place that the world is in on fire. A conversation about that power of popular culture and how we can leverage it to move the world in the right direction, and share some examples. But, of course, this is gaming. Gaming for good, so, reflecting on what the game's influence has had on me. I'm a Duolingo girl, va bene. Every day I get my Italian lesson. I love my Wii. I love, there's so many elements of gaming, past, present, and future. So, it is just a much bigger thing in our lives. What about you, Kumi? How's gaming in your life?
I gotta say, you're much more with the program than I am. Gaming for me goes back to board games. And board games are a very big part of my childhood. Even growing up working class in apartheid South Africa, you had access to snakes and ladders, Ludo. Most young people don't know these games anymore, and so on. And I had a personal experience recently when had a traumatic loss in my family, and my grandson, part of what gave him a lot of support was being able to play Fortnite and to have a whole lot of things around Fortnite, because he and his dad used to play Fortnite and it was a real bonding thing. So I've come to realize that actually amongst the many things that the gaming industry can offer to the world, one of the things it can offer is a huge contribution to addressing one of the biggest issues that we face right now, which is a growing global mental health and well-being crisis.
So do you play Fortnite with your grandchild?
No, I'm sorry, I'm not that skilled. I have tried to ask him to teach me, but I'm too slow for him.
Kumi, you are an activist and an artivist, and you're that social impact focused guy who've been doing it your whole life. Just for all of us, what is it arts and culture can do, including gaming, in changing the world?
So Katja, after about 45 years of activism, starting at the age of 15 against the anti-apartheid struggle, I've come to realize that one of the biggest mistakes that activism makes is that we focus all our attention on the brain. Our narratives are all aimed at facts, figures, science, policies, and so on. And what Donald Trump and Steve Bannon and people like him teach us, that actually you can bypass the brain and go straight to the heart and weaponize all sorts of hate that exist in the world. So today, the challenge for those that are seeking change is not to tell lies like many politicians do, but is to stay truthful, but recognize that people are not moved primarily by science. Like in the climate struggle in particular, we are so focused on science and policy and so on, and that's not breaking through. And when we look at struggles for justice around the world, especially where you have large numbers of people not being able to read and write because of educational disenfranchisement, that you look at, and in my case in South Africa, the role that arts and culture played in moving, educating people, in moving them into action has been critical. And today, I would argue the one-liner that I say in virtually every speech goes something like this: harnessing the power of arts and culture on its own will not deliver us salvation from the climate crisis and the intersecting crises. However, failing to harness the power of arts and culture almost guarantees that we're going to fail. And as far as I'm concerned, gaming today is one of the most critical parts of popular culture, and those of us who are seeking change will be completely stupid not to embrace its power in its fullest sense.
Gaming holds the power of radical change.
Yeah. And you know, just to throw a question to you, one of the things that UN Live Museum for the United Nations, on whose board I serve, has been talking and engaging in the area of gaming for at least 2 years now. And I know we've had conversations with different companies in this space, but you've also been doing some interesting testing and conversations with young people, particularly in China. So I thought it would be helpful to share that with the audience.
Sure, yeah, absolutely. And we have been working on it because it is one of those popular culture movements that, you know, should not, cannot, may not be ignored, even if some people just say it's for fun and giggles. I also have to say that being up in the arcade yesterday and losing my sense of time, and just kind of getting into it, was just probably one of the most inspiring afternoons I've had for a long time. But what we have done at UN Live, and we'll be doing a lot more of, including with Susanna and Games for Change, is we did work, we do work in China. We have worked with the Chinese International School to build and prototype games with students, to expose a lot of young people for the opportunity to both learn about the Sustainable Development Goals, but also learn about the power of gaming and to try it out. Often we see that the theory and the practice are separate, but here the whole learning and the doing with industry folks proved really measurably changing. So, you know, how do we turn the hyper-casual gamers into hyper-casual social activists and also play the game, you know, that you like to protect the planet that you love? So throwing some of those challenges to a lot of young people in China and now beyond that has been extremely enlightening and has more than whet the appetite on continuing in this. And and we'll get back to how. But first, I would like to share, or ask you to share, Kumi, an example of, and it's not from gaming, but it is really, how can we hack the systems? How can we take the behavior change we need with the cultural genre we love, whether it's music or film or arts or gaming, and work with a vehicle that can really engage? Would you tell us all about the Sounds Right?
So one of the things that traditional activism does is imagines that it knows the answers to most of the problems, and it goes to the people and communicates with people of stand up and do this, mobilize and do that. Sounds Right is a different approach, but before I tell you about it, I just want to quickly try a trick question. How many of you know who was the first musical performer in the history of the planet?
And you cannot look at the screen right now.
If anybody who's heard the question for the first time, you want to shout it out? Who was the first musical performer in the history of the planet?
Nature.
Okay, nature. So it's waves and waterfalls and whales and birds and other animals, volcanoes, and so on. And so if we, those of us who are not musicians, go to the close to 2 billion plus people on Spotify and other streaming platforms with a message of advocacy and say you should do A, B, and C, they don't have a real incentive to embrace us, right? But if we can get musicians who they love, they get joy from and so on, to send a message to bring them closer to the sustainability and the climate change agenda, that is seemingly a better approach. So UN Museum for the United Nations has been working for the last year and a bit to bring together a range of musicians who use the sounds of nature in their music, right? So when they publish the songs, it will say Katja Iversen featuring nature, right? So we, just in the run-up to Earth Day this year at the United Nations, we launched with the first 20 of the artists who have already used the sounds of nature. We've launched it, and in the first 2 weeks, it was, so you can imagine now, featuring nature became one of the most popular artists on Spotify, and for the first 2 weeks, it was the number one in the 1% top performing artists, right? Now the idea there is really to meet people where they are, right? So if billions of people are on that platform, just as billions of people are in gaming, we need to be respectful of where they are and try to understand the consciousness that they have and not try to project our consciousness onto them. The other good thing about the Sounds Right initiative is that, let's just say Katja produces a song and uses 5% of the sounds of nature in that song, then 5% of the proceeds of that song goes into a global fund to support First Nations, Indigenous peoples and frontline communities' efforts at protecting biodiversity and recovering biodiversity. The projections are that in 2 years' time, we will be raising about $40 million a year to actually support these efforts. So while the initiative of Sounds Right is really about consciousness change and popular culture shift, it's nice to also have a particular positive effect that we can resource the works of frontline communities and indigenous peoples. Right.
Yeah, so now nature actually owns her own sounds. So if you want to listen to the waves, the wind, and the thunder, or the whales, you will be doing good just by listening. Can I just show this one? Because it's actually pretty cool.
Listen. Imagine if these sounds We're featured every time we listen to this. So nature can finally be credited for her work and receive funds for her own conservation. Nature is now officially an artist and is collaborating with some of the biggest names in music. It's time to become a fan of nature. All you have to do is listen. How does that sound?
Sounds right. So why bring that up at a gaming event? Well, one, we're taking this into the gaming universe now. So, aren't these concerts going to happen on the gaming platforms? Apart from, Glastonbury this weekend and some of the other big festivals. But also, can we find together, this is a challenge, some, kind of that intersection of the behavior change we need for the many people doing what we can for a sustainable world. And I'm not talking, a bleak, dark, boring world. I'm talking the hopeful, green, wonderful, where there's a lot more togetherness. Can we kind of find that game that can do that or develop it together? And can we also find the vehicle that can get it out and involve the really many people? If we can get some kind of revenue as we get on the royalties on this, more power to it. But it's mainly the behavior change of the many in a sustainable direction we as you and I would be looking for. So big challenge to all of you. So Kumi, you, and I also want to say, right now the artists are calling us because the artist actually has shot up to the top of the charts. Nature has. So you will see a lot more if you're into dance. Disclosure will be coming with a dance track in a minute, and there's a lot more artists coming along from all over the world, because this is not just a global north, global minority work. This is everybody. But time flies when we're having fun. Kumi, you have that extensive, experience in activism of all kinds. Both the very physical one of gluing yourself to I don't know what, but also, kind of challenging both the big powers, the big money, the big politics in making change, and activism. Looking at the audience we have, the people we have, both here and online, what's your ask and advice? Because we all have inherited power, and we can all use it for something good. And if not us, then who? What would you be asking people to do?
Okay, thanks, Katja. So first, I should just say, anybody who has access to Taylor Swift, please connect us with her, because I think she'll give Sounds Right a big boost. But the idea behind what we're doing is to bring in emerging artists as well as established artists, because I think both can cross-pollinate each other. So one of the things the gaming industry often will say is that to enter this industry and to be part of it as a gamer and a participant, it's quite easy. All you need is a cell phone, Wi-Fi access, and a computer. And that's true. It makes it very, very accessible. So one of the things I wanted to say to the young people here, bring into the gaming space a much deeper sense of equity. What I mean by that is, yes, it is more accessible than most things, but bear in mind, on telephone access, 1/3 plus people in the world don't have access to telephone. Another 1/3 don't have access to Wi-Fi. And those that have access don't have the kinds of access that gives you the kind of quality to play gaming for a prolonged period of time. And then, of course, in terms of computer access, a much larger number do not have access. So what I'm saying to young people in particular, do not accept the world that we live in as the norm and the status quo. Push back on it. Also recognize that we know that the algorithms in terms of AI and machine learning, some of which have presence in the gaming space, that these reflect the people in the world which dominate the industry. And I want to say the uncomfortable thing today, when we talk about global south and global north, the global south is where the overwhelming global majority of people live. And therefore, if you're going to get this right, you really need to be looking at how we deal with the fact that we could end up with approaches that are structurally racist or structurally exclusive, excluding. So please take that challenge up as part of what you do. But I want to just end with a more general message to young people with this view. Young people today must recognize that my generation has failed you, that we have not been able to deliver the solutions in terms of climate change on time. We have not been able to move the gender equity or the economic justice agenda forward as much as we need to. So I say to young people today, the most important message is, please do not put any further faith into my generation, because we are the biggest bunch of losers you're going to find anywhere on the planet, right? But instead, imagine a world that is quite different from what you find before you. Because basically the most important thing that arts and culture and young people can give to the world right now is a sense of imagination. It's a sense of imagining a different world where there's less conflict, greater justice, more unity, more compassion, and so on. And we need young people to bring their technological skills, but also their freshness of their lenses to addressing old intractable problems that we seem to have been unable to do. So to young people, I say, own this industry, lead this industry, bring your fresh ideas, and be part of securing your future and your children's future by making sure that you use your skills for a fundamental public purpose and for protecting current and future generations' life on this planet. Just to end on a positive note, all of you are worried about saving the planet. Don't worry about saving the planet. The planet is absolutely just fine, because if we continue the way we are, the end result is we will be gone, the planet will still be here. And the good news is, once we become extinct as a species, the forests will recover, the oceans will replenish, and so on. So don't worry about saving the planet. Understand that the challenge before us is to secure our children and their children's future, and let's use every bit of capability, including gaming, to advance us to secure that goal. Thank you very much.
Well, I had 3 advice, but kind of after that, who would ever? My ask is, become a friend of nature. She's right there. Thank you.
Thank you.